arrived in Cumberland by car around 9 a.m. It was brisk and overcast, and we were ready to go. Cumberland is the central town that lies between the Gap and the C&O Canal towpath. We're cycling the Gap, so we'll be headed towards Pittsburgh and plan to make this trip in 3 nights, 4 days, cycling roughly the 150 miles. Cumberland's located at about 620 feet above sea level, and our first 24 miles will be climbing up to the Continental Divide, which is the highest point on the trail, located at about 2,400 feet. As we continue our journey from Cumberland to Frostburg, so I figured I'd take just a few minutes to share what I consider some helpful tips. Before I explain my helpful tips, I just want you to understand that this is my wife and I's second through ride of the Gap, and our third friend along for this journey, it's her first. And that leads me to the first point, group riding. Now, it is an entirely different dynamic to reach outside of your solo or your spouse and complete a ride with a group. So the first thing that we did was make sure that we did multiple rides. We rode for 4 months together as a group. You begin to understand each other's strengths, weaknesses, you develop that trust, and that further along will allow you to prepare how you will be doing your miles. Secondly, if this is your first ride, there are good resources available to be used. When we first started, we found the trail guide that's available for sale either on Amazon or a local outdoor store such as REI. They're very inexpensive and they update pretty regularly. That has maps, it has every town along the way with what's available. It's a little bulkier, so it's a little extra weight to carry, but it is very resourceful. The second is another paper map, a little less bulky. It's provided by the Gap Trail. It's very informative. It has mileage between towns. It has the overall map of the trail, and it's much more lightweight. Now the third is obviously now the app. The Gap Trail app is available on the smartphones. There's a picture of the icon I'll throw up there, and that is very useful as well. It will GPS your location, and it will give you your mileage to and behind you to waypoints that are on the trail, and found that pretty useful as well. Sometimes I did have errors when I was trying to use that along with my GPS separately. You know, the Map My Ride, they seem to have a little bit of conflict between the two, but overall, if we were stopped for lunch or just taking another break on the trail, it was very good to take a look at, see where we're at, see what we have for mileage, or if there's anything else along the way without pulling out the book. The last tip I have is YouTube. There's a lot of people logging the rides nowadays, so you can get an overall look at the terrain. Multiple people are uploading every year, so just make sure you're grabbing something current. You can get an idea of what the conditions are like, the towns you pass through. It's a great tool as well. So hopefully you found that these tips useful. If you are trying to complete your first gap trail, it's just something a little different than just watching people bike.
We arrived at Frostburg, mile marker 15, to take our lunch and rest a little from our never-ending climb, but we have reached our mental halfway point. It was a good break. The stop is very nice. It has a water fountain, porta toilets, and chairs under a covered pavilion. And just up the hill, there are some amenities in town. There's also some great artwork right up on the hill, which has a zigzag path from top to bottom. Shortly after leaving Frostburg and continuing our climb, of course, we arrived at the Mason and Dixon line. It used to be the symbolic line that separated the North and the South and runs for about 233 miles between Pennsylvania and Maryland. We were fortunate enough to arrive there without too much activity, and we're able to get some good pictures and enjoy the moment. It seemed like after that stop at the Mason and Dixon line, we were quickly approaching Mount Savage. It's the home of the Big Savage Tunnel. This tunnel was very dark and it was nearly 3,300 feet long. It took us about 6 minutes to pass through, and this was built as the final connection between the states and now serves as the only real way to connect the Gap and the C&O. With shouts of joy and some other words, we finally reached the end of our 24-mile climb to the divide, boasting 2,400 feet elevation, and we knew it was all downhill from here. In only a few short miles, we'll be at our stopping point in Myersdale at Yoder's Guest House.